All right, that's what we're starting with. Like I said, I don't want to do the colors. I want to be a little bit more green, a little more of a little bit phthalo blue in it to make it a little bit more green. You'll see that when we get to that step. But first thing we're gonna do, starting in the back, you notice looking at this, there's no sky. That's not blue sky behind there. That's all trees. That's all that's in this picture is trees. So yeah, no sky, no clouds. I know some of you wanted to do clouds.
No sky.
But we're going to start back here. And we always start by just covering the canvas.
Yeah.
And you could do that with a color or just another coat of gesso. But what I want to do is do kind of like a gradient. But just know this, and I say this all the time, but it will all be covered up. Everything we're going to paint here is going to be covered up. This is the background. It's just to get some paint on the canvas. Don't stress too much about this. So this is going to be a quick step. And I'm going to try to mix most of it on the canvas as I go. And most of the greens we make are going to be, these three colors. Yellow and blue makes green. We know that, right? But we're never going to use just straight yellow and blue makes green. It's too pretty.
Too bright.
So you add a little brown to it. That makes it not quite as pretty.
Sage.
Right? Some version of this is going to be what's going to cover most of the canvas. And I'm going to get a lot more paint than that because I want to have enough to make it all the way across. We'll put a touch of white in it. I got to put some gesso in it just so it'll be more solid. So it'll cover the canvas real good. This side, no phthalo in this yet. We'll use that when we get towards the end, but this, for now, it's just this kind of ugly green. Color on this is not as important as value. We want the darkness and lightness part right. And like I said, I'm going to mix a lot of this on the canvas as I go. Don't matter that it's kind of coming out in different colors. Coming up, I'm going to come with some more yellow as I get up towards the top. Again, all this is going to be covered up, so it doesn't really matter exactly.
Needs to be a totally army green.
Mixing it on the canvas as we go. But I want my brightest spot to be about right there. So I'm saving that for last. Kind of scrub this in. Now I'm going to clean this brush out some. And then come back with some gesso. Just straight gesso. Maybe put just a touch of yellow in it. For this middle part here, yeah. That part. Before I get my brush dirty, I'm going to go ahead and just cover the canvas on that part. And then let it kind of spiral, kind of circle out from there. Now, I don't care about these brush strokes. Like I said, every bit of this is going to be covered up. Really just want to go light to dark, have a light spot there in the middle, and have it get darker as it goes to the outside. So that took me, what, 2 minutes? Y'all can do it in 10 probably?
About 20.
I'll meet you at 11.
Great grandma's
Let's get that far. We're going to do another coat of that on here. But before we do, I want to talk about this green a little bit as we go, because everybody's is slightly different right now, which is fine. It's going to end up being everybody's going to have a different shade. But I want to just show you a little bit about how to work this green. We know that the brown and blue together, 50-50, is going to make a black. If you're too blue, add a little brown. If you're too brown, add a little blue. If you started with black and all you did was add a little yellow to it, you're going to get a pretty natural looking green. All right, that's going to be a manageable green. The mistake that a lot of people make starting out is that yellow and blue makes green. So what you'll do is come in and start with just yellow and blue, and your green gets to be kind of neon looking. And that doesn't look real in most situations. But we're going to have some very bright greens in here, but in order for these to work, you have to have a base for them. You have to have the other colors in there. Green is a spectrum of colors. Most of if you had nothing but that, you don't have anywhere to go. You can go a little bit more yellow in it, and you can get a little lighter. You can put white in it, you can go a little lighter. But you don't have a whole lot of range of how far you can go. If you go in the blue direction, it gets more blue, but it doesn't really get darker, if that makes sense. You can get bluer, and all of it kind of looks, you know, like crayon colors.
Yes.
They're not very realistic looking.
Crayon colors.
With the addition of the brown to it, or I'll say it this way, starting with black and adding yellow, if you go a little lighter, you add a little more yellow, the color actually changes. It gets a little greener as you go down. By adding more yellow, it gets more and more into a bright green color. And by putting a little white in it, you still get to that really light color that you wanted before down here. But in order to get it darker, and this is the key, is to be able to make contrast. That just changes the color. Be able to get darker as you go further into the, you know, away from that, you get into almost solid black. But we're gonna start with a lot of dark and lighten it as we go. But our colors will be more like what's on this side and less like what's on this side until the end, when we start wanting to really change, make some of those bright colors when they make sense. Now, back here, the only part of this sky that's going to be remaining is kind of this strip right in here. So we need to make that kind of smooth, and even that is not going to be smooth. We're going to texture it up. So don't worry one bit about your brush strokes. I've seen a lot of people really trying to smooth everything out. That's just not necessary. But I'm going to do another layer. This is where I want to get the colors a little closer to what I want. And I'm going to start with this light color in the middle, this lighter yellow. Now, if all I did was take this light yellow and start here and put a coat of that on here, it would make the rest of that look so much smoother, just because you can see through it. That's the point of doing this in layers. It is see-through. Each layer is going to make the next one look a little smoother. You know, so if yours is looking rough, do more layers of it, transition it, dry it, and come back and transition it. So all the brush strokes that were there, they kind of start dissolving away the more layers you put on there. As I come out, I'm going to get a little bit more color in here, but not a lot. I want this to show through. Just keeping a lot of yellow. And if you want it to be more transparent, put more water in it. And if you want it to be less transparent, put more gesso. That's the trick. I told you we were going to cover all that up, right?
You did.
Still not worried about it being super smooth, because we're going to put texture. We're going to cover it all up. This is mainly just yellow and white. I put just a touch of my muddy green color as I get further out, but it's mostly just yellow and white. That might be a little too yellow. You can blend that on the canvas as we go. So drastically changing the color of the overall canvas. That's why I told everybody it doesn't really matter if yours is not exactly the right color. We're going to have a chance to tweak that. Now, all of this on the outside is going to be covered up with trees anyway. So don't stress about this outside part too much. Just don't leave any hard lines. The goal is to make a pretty smooth transition from light to dark, and where you can't really see where the light stops and the dark starts. So do another layer of that, dry it again, then do another layer of it just to get it good and smooth.
Yes.
Okay, so instead of doing a third layer of this to try to smooth it, because it really don't need to be smooth, we need texture. You can't see it much in this picture, but I want to have some texture. This is all trees. It's not sky. It's trees. So we're going to do some tree texture. This is far off in the distance stuff. So I'm going to come in here with my soft bristle fan brush with a lot of water in this color that I already had. You really just want to vary the color just a little. So in the middle, I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. I probably have to work a variety of the shades of this color here. Go a little bit lighter on this part. Whew, making a mess. Let's get all of that out of there. So I can get some water. Now the trick to this is you got to get those bristles to separate. And the way to do that was with a lot of water and beating the fan brush up. Also, you can work some of the paint out of it. As it dries, they'll separate a little better. But what I want to do is go just in an area where I'm just a shade lighter, so just barely a shade lighter than this here, and keeping the fan brush perpendicular to the canvas, just kind of twisting and tapping. I just want texture. I just want to kind of work this all directions for texture. Start in the middle where I'm just slightly lighter than what's there. Maybe get even lighter if I can in the very middle. Again, most of this is going to be covered up, stuff that shows through later. As I come out, change my color, go a little bit darker as I go out, but still a shade lighter than what's under it. Right? Next step is a little bit darker, but still a shade lighter than what's under it. And texture. Now the only thing that's going to be left showing is kind of right in here, so we'll spend more time making that part presentable. Kind of got to put some paint on there and then push it around. I'm getting a little too light over here on my dark area. That's okay though. I'll come back with a little darker on top of it if I need to. Overall, it needs to have a gradient, you know, where it's light coming out to darker. And be able to see some texture. Now, a lot of this will disappear once it dries. A lot of this texture will kind of disappear, and you come back and do a few layers of it if you need to.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, just enough. And I can still see a brush stroke here and there. That's fine. Once this dries, I can do a little bit more of this if there's something I need to hide. Yeah, once I get out to the dark, it shows up a little better. But all of this over here is going to be completely covered up, so I'm not going to spend any time on this over here because that's all covered up. This side's covered up. The only thing really showing is this kind of area right through here. So play with that, go back and forth, light and dark, but make sure that you have the brightest spot right there and that it's radiating out and you can't see your brush strokes really. Alright, so we got texture going up all the way to the sky. Remember, all we're going to see is kind of this section right in here. That's all that's really going to be left when we're said and done. I put a couple of lines on here. We're going to say this is 16 by 20. We're going to say 7 inches up from the bottom. This is going to be our horizon line. And then this mass of trees, which we're about to start on right now, this big mass of trees over here, it's going to come out to a point right in here. We're going to call that 7 inches from here. So we got 7 inches up, 7 inches over. And if you want to be crazy, we could do the same line over here. You don't really necessarily need to draw this, but I wanted to show it to you. 7 inches in on this side, and that same angle down to 7 inches from this corner. It's kind of going to create our composition that we're looking at. That swing is going to sit right on this mark. It's going to come down right through this 7-inch mark. Our base of our trees is going to end right here. So these lines are going to be there. You're not going to really see them or know you're seeing them, but they're going to be there. Now, I say this to say, all I want you to draw is this one, and maybe make a mark here on the 7 inches, and maybe a mark here at 7 inches, just so you know where that mass starts and ends. But please don't paint a straight line right there, okay?
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
No fun at all, is it?
Gonna break some rules right here. This is black. Straight black. But I wanted to show you this because you can use it. When I was really struggling with green, especially starting out struggling with green, if you use black and add a little yellow to it to make your greens, I mean, you use yellow and add a little black to it, is the way to do it. It makes a green that is very usable, very manageable.
Yeah.
That's pretty similar to the green we're getting over here, right? Because that's basically what we're doing. We're making black out of brown and blue and then adding our green to it. But I want to go straight black. What we're going to do here is basically make a sketch. Every bit of this is going to be covered up, well, except maybe the really dark shadows in the bottom of it. But even they will probably be tinted a different color. But what I want to do is put the mass of trees in here. This is going to be our sketch, basically.
Gonna be our blocking in.
We're blocking in with black. So to do this, and this is practice to use this fan brush too. Make sure you get plenty of water in it. The bristles are not separating really all that good yet. I'm going to start down here where I want it to be solid, and by the time I get out to the edge, now my bristles are doing better, right? Once I get my bristles to the point where I want it, but I still got some paint in the brush, then we'll come up here to my edge that I want to look good, and just start using the corners of the brush, keeping it perpendicular. You don't want to do this. You don't want to paint with it. It's just tapping. And I'm just going to kind of draw that kind of edge of where these trees are.
Yeah.
I need a little more paint. So what I want to end up with is sort of what looks like trees, kind of trying to follow that line, but not perfectly. But I want it to end about here. Right?
Yeah.
Now on that very outside edge, I want to make sure I leave a lot of light shining through. A lot of space in there for that. I don't care about this line at the bottom. I'm gonna go down to it. I'll clean that up later if needed. But as I come back here, I want the rest of this to be almost solid. As I get back in here, I'm gonna keep texture, and if a little bit of that light shows through, that's good, but mostly solid back here. So lacy out towards the edges, but pretty solid as I get towards the back. And then back here, I'm just gonna throw some paint on there and push it around. Get a lot of paint. I want this to be almost solid. We again are going to paint colors and everything on top of this. This is our sketch, basically.
You got any yellow in that?
I haven't got any yet. It's just
Nothing.
water.
Black.
Yeah, real black out of the tube. Black.
Like Mars black?
Illegal
Yes,
black.
like
It's
Mars
Mars
black.
or ivory, either one
Yeah.
will work.
Both.
I got shamed one time for using straight black.
Yeah, well, you were
Well,
cheating.
guess what?
You were cheating though, Brian. That's different.
I think I
It's different when you're cheating than when he tells you to. There's a difference.
I'm going to kind of fuzz that out just a little because it'll be easier to cover up at the bottom. If we put that in while I've got this black in here, I might as well go ahead and put a little bit of it down in this bottom corner, because that's also part of our sketch. We know we're not going to come all the way up to the horizon with it, but pretty much down in this corner. This will be nice and dark, and it's going to come all the way down about here. And that doesn't have to have anything special texture-wise. Just putting some dark down there as a sketch, so we know that that's kind of where that's going to be. That's going to be mostly grasses. Don't have to be solid, just pretty dark.
One day we need to paint on a black canvas.
Maybe so, yeah. You can try
We
this.
would paint that.
Fun. Oh, we
So-
got paint lots of stuff.
Lacy to the edges, not a straight line, okay, not a waterfall, ending at that certain point, 7-inch horizon, 7-inch down, 7 inches up here, and leave a little holes here. But okay, so y'all got that? You got 40 minutes left. That's all you. All right. This block of black that we put in here, like I said, it's a sketch. I hope nobody fell in love with it, because we're going to paint over all of it. And even this background, some of this we're going to paint over, so don't be in love with any of it. But if you look at how this is, you see this is not one big mass of one tree. There's layers of it, and that's what we got to create. So if you notice behind there's a layer that's got some trees growing back behind there. So we got to not think of this as a something that
As a
is a
bush.
finished product. It's going to be layers. And part of that's going to be, we'll have, like a tree here, a tree here. It'll be layers and layers of it. But we're going to start at the back and build forward. And in the very back, it kind of, the light's going to filter through it. And I want to do a little bit better job than what this original is. So watch closely, and you got to kind of trust the process here. This is going to be a little different.
Watch close.
Starting off, I'm gonna make a color that is real similar to what's behind it right there. Maybe a little bit prettier, a little bit greener. When I say pretty, I'm talking about a little bit greener, a little bit more vibrant. The hue of it, which usually means a little bit more blue. We're still not getting into the phthalo blue. We're still just using our basic 3 colors. Yeah, be sure to get some water so your brush acts right. But it's got to have some white in it, or it won't show up on top of this black. So what I'm going to start with, let me get a little bit lighter, I think. I just want to be a shade, just a shade different than what's behind there. That's probably pretty close right there. All right, I'm going to get my brush to separate. This brush ain't had enough miles on it. First thing I'm going to do, on this front edge, I'm not really worried about all of this back here yet. We're just going to work on kind of this section here. I want to cover all of this black here. And I don't care that I get, every, that I paint on it. I want to paint over it a little bit. Right. If I go on top and go outside of it, that's fine. But I want to cover what's there. It's going to show through a little bit because it's almost impossible to cover this stuff up. But that's by design. We're going to use that. We'll be able to see our sketch through it, more or less. And when I do go out over the stuff behind there, it's okay. Because that's going to look like it's that glow effect kind of behind the trees there. And it's only going to show up really on top of my really light area here. Alright, so like I said, I'm only really worried about this front section right now. See how that does the color? I'm using one color, but you see so many different shades of color in there already.
Yeah.
It's gonna do some of the work for you. I'm kind of making that a little bit solid there. Now, real quick, if we can dry this. All right, so now that's a little bit dry. This is where it gets fun. I'm gonna come back in with some of my a little bit even lighter color. This time I really want to match what's behind there. If anything, maybe even a hair lighter than what's behind it. My sky color. That's what I want, is my sky. That really pale sky green right there. And this brush, you can use whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and just get a lighter brush because I want the small tip of it.
We need one of those little tubes.
I know, right?
Who made those?
Get it at Home Depot. They sell a 2-foot piece for like $1, and you cut it in half, put the little ends, 30-cent ends on.
They even have the ends in the same bins.
Nothing to it.
Your own.
I saw them the
So
other
plenty
day.
of water?
This is kind of thick because I want it to cover. Now, seeing my black through there, you can kind of use that as an indication of where to go. But I want the sky to kind of show through here in some places. And so if I've matched that sky color, I can come in with this. And this is just some small work, but it'll make a big difference. Just little spots. I'll show you the trick to this. See, I got that matched pretty close with what's there.
So is it under the black?
What I'm trying to do is paint up to the black, but I want to leave some of these little light leaves showing through. But the black is my sketch, so that's kind of where I want my borders to be. But if some of that extra green shows through, that's fine. It looks like those leaves are kind of glowing.
Are we gonna come over it with another color?
This, not right here out on here in the edge.
No, but I mean where it's budded.
Oh, all of this over here, yeah.
Okay. I have
Lots
to
of
have a
layers.
vision of where we're going.
Lots of layers, and I know that's the hard part. It's
Layers.
hard for me to show you
Layers.
what's coming.
As long as I have a general idea.
Good stuff is coming.
So I'm just
When you get this paint, now this is not very watery. It's kind of creamy, but when you get these spots on here like this, you can come back and just kind of touch them.
Yeah.
Splotch them out a little bit.
Yeah, and just the paint picks up on your finger and it kind of carries that paint everywhere else. See how that kind of creates that glow behind there? In order for that to work, your color's got to kind of match what's behind it.
Right.
And I want to come on in with some of this into this area. So that's where my black, I can see the black through there. So I can see kind of some spots where there would be some stuff. All right, and if you want to get even crazier, imagine some of this is tree trunks. And I can kind of see some things in here that kind of look like they might have been tree trunks. But if you had, let's say, just imagine there was 2 trees. You can't really see that, but if imagine there's two tree trunks right there. Watch this right here. See if I can make this work. If I put a little light in between them, kind of make an area of light. This is way back stuff, disappearing way in the background stuff nobody's going to notice later, but you'll notice it. See how that did?
Yeah.
Kind of creates a couple of
Oh, I see.
trees back
Yeah.
there.
It's, yeah, that's pretty cool.
So do some of that. So what I want to do is spend a little time here. We'll do maybe 20 minutes or so on,
20?
yeah, 20, 30 minutes maybe at the most. We got a lot of steps to do
We
tonight.
go for 30.
Get your,
We're just going to
get your lightest color there, and I really want to focus most of this in the bright spot right there. You can do some of it as you go down, but most of it in the bright spot.
Okay.
So I know it's hard to see at this point, but that section, if you could block off all of this and think of that section being, 50 yards further back than this section here. It's not one big piece, it's layered. That's way back in the back. So having that in mind, we're going to put some trees in there, some tree trunks. I'm going to start by making a black that's kind of towards brown. I guess would be considered a really dark brown.
Yeah.
Put a little gesso in it off to the side. I don't really want gray. I want it to have more of a brown than a gray. Might even have a touch of yellow in there, because this far away it's going to have a little bit of a green tint, like everything else. Okay. Now in order for this to flow right, I got to get enough water in it.
You paying attention like that? You need to be watching.
All right. So this is not trees that are up here. This is trees that are way in the back. You got to keep thinking that way. Block all that out of your mind, and we got to think about trees that are way back. Now that layer is really far back. This is going to come just a hair closer, and we're going to put just some tall trees in here. Okay. Not a whole lot. Just a few. I don't want them to get too big at the bottom. And some of them don't even have to go all the way.
Yeah, that looks good.
Kind of just indicate a little here and there. And I don't want to get carried away with a bunch of limbs. We're going to put some stuff out in front of this. But I do want to make sure they follow the rules and get bigger as they go down.
Follow the rules, trees.
Just
Follow the rules.
That would come in.
Still following God's creative
Okay.
and following being creative.
Kind of grab. That would kind of split on me.
What are you trying to say about me? These are hard.
Now, so thinking in terms of layers, that's one layer. I want to have a little bit kind of coming in front of this, because everything you do, layered like this, each layer pushes the last one back a little bit. As we come forward, you're going to get a little less see-through, a little more solid. But you're going to have to keep putting white so it shows up on this black. So again, I'm going to start with a green.
We're not using phthalo yet, are we?
No, we're not
Not yet.
phthalo in this yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Are you wanting to?
Yeah, and honestly, with this, you probably usually want to go a little more yellow than what you think you're going to need, especially when you're painting on top of this black. A little more yellow, because it makes it, the black underneath is going to change the color a little bit. It's got to have some gesso in it to be solid though on that. And I can test this color down here if I want to, just to see what it's going to look like. And I like that. Okay, so next steps. Next layer. Now again, thinking about this in clusters, not in one big group. Let's say this one is kind of right here. Okay, it's going to come down in front of all this. All right. Got my brush kind of separated a little bit. The light is coming from behind there, so the light's going to be hitting this front edge, and I can kind of just imagine that is, as its own little set of trees right there. Now I could have waited for this to dry, or dried it. It's going to pick some of it up, but that's okay.
Mine ain't gonna look like that.
How you know? Yeah, each layer will have a little bit on front of it. But you see how it does with the black underneath? It gives you kind of some depth already. And each time we do this, I want to do it in kind of two steps. So I'm going to do that bright green, then I'm going to come back and darken it up a little bit. Put some of my brown in there with a little bit of the blue. It gives me a darker shade of it. This brush does not want to cooperate. And this darker part will be the shadowy side underneath here. Okay. Yeah, by doing this wet, it kind of blends with it, but that's okay. And as it goes back here, I'm just going to kind of let it disappear into here, because we'll come back and do another layer in front of that. But if any of this shows through, it'll have some texture and it'll look like something. You don't want to end with a straight line right there, because it'll be real hard to hide that later. I'm just going to keep working until my brush runs out of paint back here. So it's a gradient of those colors. Now, each step of the way, what I want you to do is go back and forth between seeing where the edges are going to be. So the edges out there are bright, but you may have another area in here where it's catching a little sunlight. Do that. And then this backside kind of disappears into the darker area. So even though I'm only using two colors, you get a lot of variation of different colors in there. It really looks like you got a lot of different shades going on. So that's going to be this patch. Then the next step I'm going to do is I may put a couple of more trees in here that are a little thicker, a little closer, with a little more detail. I do want to, after these dry, I do want to come back with I ruined my black color, but come back with a lighter shade of that and put a little bit of highlight in spots, just where it's really exposed on that side, just a little bit on the right side of some of these.
Is that the green?
It's just a lighter shade of that tree.
Kind of like a gradient.
Yeah, just little spots here and there. You don't need too much of that. So we'll do some of this, some of that, and on each layer, and when I say each layer because we're going to do this several times, there's an even brighter color of that where it's just got some more white that I can come back with the very tips and look for spots, like against this dark background here. Look for some spots where you could do a little extra highlighting to that edge and some of these edges. And the same kind of thing, once you put it on there, if you do these dots, you can kind of, it works better if what's underneath is dry.
Imagine that.
Make a mess. But yeah, so I'm going to go back and forth with that. I got a dark, a mid, and a light, and that's this cluster. And then we'll do a dark and mid and light for a different cluster, so bigger trees coming. So I did, and some of you may want to do this or may not, I did make this bright color and do a wash over the back part of that. Just kind of put some paint on there and then wiped it off to kind of let those go back just a little further because they were kind of stark. That way when I do these next ones, they'll be darker and they'll look further forward. But that's what I'm going to do next, is start with some of that same brown. Got a little green in it, it's okay. I don't want it to be solid black, and I don't want straight brown out of the tube either. It'll kind of look cartoony if you do that. Somewhere in between.
Just being out like this on these other places.
Now these are going to be forward a little bit more, so they're going to be a little thicker.
Oh, that's a big tree.
It's the same size as the ones behind it, it's just closer. I'm going to let it kind of just die down in here somewhere because I'm going to paint some at the bottom of that. So let's do just a few of these.
You just a renegade. She gonna be done too.
It takes a little while before you start seeing this kind of come together. Might do one.
You don't want to be paying attention to mine.
You the one's gonna ask questions.
You got that right.
One more thin one here. It's gonna be about the same thickness of the ones behind there, but it'll be closer.
Yeah.
It'll be more solid,
Right.
which will make it seem closer. Okay, so that's a little bit closer. So now, it's easier to cover up if it's soft. Okay, so again, thinking of this in layers. That's way back there. This is a little closer. These are kind of in front of that. We're going to have some more stuff in front of this. I want some limbs to kind of come in front of that. And then there's another bulk of this that comes even more forward on this part. But for now, just to catch up, at this point, it's more about the value than the color. But I'm going to try to get a green that's kind of almost shadowy blue-gray green, almost a little bit like that. Sort of like what's down here. And it will start in just kind of covering some of this black down here up. Now, just as an idea, this is where my other tree is going to live. It's going to kind of be right there, going to come forward a little bit right there. Just throwing that shape in there just to hold it. And leaving some texture. So texture, always there. All that's going to be covered up. But now, going on up, it's going to get darker as we go over. So it's going to be kind of a gradient of darker as it goes back. This color, I'm going to put a little bit of my brighter mix with it and put a little bit of the gesso in there with it so it'll cover a little bit. And let's see. I know that I want to have sort of a cluster right here that kind of comes out in front of these trees a little. Alright, and so as I go back, I'm just going to let that color disappear till it runs out of my brush. And at the top, I'll try to get an even different color. A little lighter value. To be the very top part. A little more sun getting through to that. And if with having this black behind there, if the paint just kind of fades back into the black, you get some shadows that automatically appear back there. So there's several colors. You got a bright green, you got a mid green, kind of a bluish down here. It gets kind of bluer as it goes towards this corner, a little bit yellower as it moves out. But each step of the way, as I build these shapes, I'm going to have a shadow side, a mid-tone, and a bright side to each of these little individual clusters. So I really want to have kind of one shape here that trickles down in front of these branches, another shape back there that kind of sticks out that's darker, and another shape up here that's lighter. Just so you don't have one flat, think of it as layers and layers of clusters of trees. So let's all just work on that the rest of class and get it just built up. You get to hear me. Good job. Tonight, I want to get the ground put in, all of it except for this foreground part. Get all this background, ground. Maybe not all the detail stuff yet. We want to get the base of the ground in and put the trees in and hopefully finish the trees tonight so that next week we can work on this foreground and all the flowers and details and stuff in the foreground and the swing. But I want to spend some time on these trees, so let's go through the ground fairly quickly. For colors on this, now everybody's has started already going in different directions. Everybody's kind of looks a little different, which is okay. Everybody's got their own little flavor on theirs already, which is fine. And we're going to see that, but so go with what you have, how you've been making your colors. Your colors are going to match what you've done. So don't try to make yours match mine exactly necessarily. Make it match yours. Make it look right on yours. But on this ground, there's really, as always, there's several shades, several values, but we got a really light spot over here. The light's going to flow across this way, and you can see these little streaks. We'll put these in here at some point too. And you got shadows where the trees are. There's a little shadow from the big massive trees there. There's a lot of shadow from this, which we kind of already have in place. But for our bright green, we're going to go with a lot of yellow. We're going to put some white in it so it can be a little more, you know, solid. And as we put some blue in it, we're starting to get this super bright green that's really too pretty to use. Let's see, a little more white in it. And that's kind of how bright I want the bright part to be. It's pretty bright. I want that to be fairly bright. It's as bright as anything in here, and even brighter. But as we come over, it's going to gradually get a little darker, and then we're going to have our shadow side here. So starting with this is just mostly yellow, tiny bit of blue, a little bit of white. And I got my stiff bristle fan brush. I'm mainly just going to paint this in here. I'm using this grass stippling kind of technique so that it can have some texture, but we're going to do a couple layers of this so it'll have a chance to texture up later. I don't care if I paint over my black part a little bit. Got to come back to that anyway. Put a little more brown in it. Start shifting that color just a little bit. I don't want a clean line where the color changes. Just want to be able to see a gradual shift in the color as we go across. So a little more of that, a little more of this, a little darker. What shows through, the ground that shows through is already green, since we did our underpainting that color. So if you have some gaps in there, it won't be the end of the world either. At its darkest, go a little more white in that. At its darkest on this side, I think that's probably about it right there. Yeah, maybe a little more. Maybe a little more. Yeah, something about like that. A little more muted back here in the corner. And we're still going to put some shadows in here. This is just the overall color of it. See, that already looks a little more natural. It's got a little ground to sit on. Our island needed a place to sit. It does get a good bit darker down. You do always kind of want the corners of your painting to be a little darker. Go a little darker down here. Yeah, variation of colors is a good thing. If you start doing it the same, especially such a big area like this, you start making it look the same all the way across. You look like you're painting a wall. We don't want that. Trying to do this quick. Get to the finished product of it, and then we'll go that far, and then we'll come back and throw a placeholder for the trees and do our shadow grasses here shortly. Don't spend too much time on this. I mean, literally about 5 to 10 minutes to throw this in here. You don't need. Okay, we got to put our 2 trees in here, at least the start of them. We're going to finish them later, but we got to figure out where they're going to go. And so, looking at the position of these, they are kind of about 1/4 of the way from the left right here. But I want you to look at yours and figure out where yours needs to be. I don't want them close to the middle. We need to keep them on this left side. But looking at kind of what's behind there. And what you need to hide and what you need to leave there. If you got something that looks good that you want to leave showing back there, definitely show it. So for this, I'm going to just make some black. Just come right here between my blue and brown and just mix up a dark shade here. Blackish, dark color. Doesn't matter exactly.
All that stuff I stressed over to put it somewhere.
Right. And a lot of water. And this is a liner brush, but it's a thick one. You may not have one like this. You can use a flat brush or whatever. This is a number 3. I just like it because it holds a lot of paint. And I've got 2 trees here. You can do these however you want. Honestly, if you only wanted one, you could do one. I like the fact that, I like having them in pairs. I think for some reason I like that better. But I want them to stop about right here. You don't want to go too far down. You don't want to stop too far up, because the further down they are, the closer they are. And when they stop back here, they're further back there. So I want them to kind of land right here in the middle. I'm going to mark a spot right here where I want that to land. And we'll start with the little one. The little one here, and just kind of start him right up there.
Brian, what was your painting, is it? You might have a little needle or something to paint it.
All that time you spend worrying about that stuff behind there, now you get to put a big black streak on top of it. Scary.
How boring this works.
You know the rules with the trees. It's just got to get bigger as it goes down, slightly. Just can't get smaller as it goes down. And if they're too perfect, they look like telephone poles. So don't worry about them. Could be. Could be. Yeah, I'm gonna go about right here. There it is. I do want this one to be wider. Get enough water in my paint to make it flow good. I want this one really to be about twice as wide.
I thought, because last time I saw you was like,
Not too big, but it's got to be sturdy enough
I know it.
to have a limb big enough to support the weight of the person swinging on that. I do want to get the edges to be a little bit, inconsistent, a little shaky. I don't want them perfect because it's going to help later when we start putting the details in if we already have some kind of nooks and crannies there. Alright, not really worried about the bottom of these. I just want to kind of end about that spot. And I may even bring this one just a little further down than the one next to it. Just to bring it a little closer to me. And again, that one just a hair shorter. And put grass under it anyway, so it doesn't matter that I wiped it off. That's just going to be a placeholder. I'm going to put a good thick coat on that and let that dry. And we're going to paint over this 100%. Every bit of that's going to be covered with other paint. So as we do these next layers of grass, we're going to get grass on those. It's not going to matter. That's a sketch right there, just like the black was down here. All right. So put those in first, and we're going to take just a minute to throw those in, and then we'll come back and work on the grass some more. All right. So like I said, those are just placeholders. That's a sketch. We're going to paint right on top of that. Now that those are there, I want you to imagine that they're not there. Because we're going to paint all over. So what we got to do now is kind of, right now our light to dark is kind of medium to dark medium. And we want to make some extreme lights and some extreme darks to kind of accentuate the light coming across here, but also to give a little more depth. So anything we can do to add a little depth here. So we'll start off with some dark. And this is darker than any of the grass we've done yet. I'll pull some of my black out here and just add a little yellow to it. So it's going to be a good bit darker than any of the grass we've done so far. Because like I said, this is if we were, 30 to 70 before, now we're going to go a little further out, darker and lighter. Now this is a shadow. This is going to be for my shadows, which are going to be under the trees.
I already taught him last week.
Let me get a little more brown. I'm just a little too green. Under the trees. So our light's coming from over here. It's coming down this way. So our shadows are going to fall this way. Right? See that? Both trees. Shadows. And this is going to let you hide the base of your trees. Where the swing is going to be here, there's some shadow kind of under it too. We'll just kind of let that float away this way. Alright? Also, I want to have some shadow back here under the base of where these trees are. Because like I said, if the light's coming across there, you're going to have some dark. Just ignore those trees. Just paint right over top of them. You'll be able to see that dark color through there. Now here's the trick. When you're doing this dark over light, and you see how the bottom of it doesn't, I'm worried more about how the top of it looks right now because I'm just using this tapping. But when I want to blend that bottom out while it's still somewhat wet, come back with just some water, dry it off a little bit, and just kind of push that around with water. You see how that does? Kind of makes it disappear. Just kind of scrub it in and let it kind of fade in with water. Just like that. Alright. Same down here. I don't care if it hides the line completely. I don't care if it has a little bit of a line because that is a cast shadow going across there. But that lets me kind of blend it out in case I have any blobs of paint at the bottom. And we're going to put some detailed grasses and things later. So that's my extreme dark. Now let's go extreme light. This is going to be almost yellow. I'm going to put just the tiniest amount of blue in it. I want it to be brighter than anything I've got on here. Here we go. Got a little white in it, a lot of yellow, tiny bit of blue. And this is where my light is really shining across here. So if you do too much of this, if you filled up all the light area up to the dark, you wouldn't have that effect. You gotta know when to stop. But I do want the light to kind of cast across this little meadow here. And I'm gonna let it kind of come up into here a little bit. I don't care if I don't have a hard line. For one thing, all that's gonna be covered up, but I don't really want to have a hard line. I want it to kind of look like that meadow just kind of goes off into nowhere. And that light cuts across here, downward like this. All right, so now it's kind of splotchy looking, but like I said, you can come back with water. Come back with water on the bottom of that and kind of blend that in a little bit better. Still using the tapping, I'm still not brushing. Still just kind of tapping it, letting the brush make some texture. And again, we're going to put flowers, we're going to do some little sprigs of stuff that'll look like grass. Straighten it a little bit. So a little more extreme on the light and the dark for the grass. Also, while I'm in this, I want to go ahead and do a little patch that kind of goes behind here, just for the sake of creating a little bit of depth behind those trees. Some of that light reaches way over here, not too much, and it looks weird because I'm painting over my trees, but we're going to put the trees back later. Just enough to have some light behind that dark. Alright. While I'm in this really bright color, I'm going to get my remember, creating depth, what we're trying to do. I'm going to use some of this really bright yellow green that I made. Brush to cooperate. Really need to break this brush in a little bit more. For one thing, you could make some little highlights out here, just to kind of tie the top to the bottom, kind of add some of that color up here. Don't want to do too much of that though, but that's where the light's coming through there. I want to do just a couple little spots up here too. Just a little spot of light behind what's going to be behind these trees. And the reason I wanted to paint the trees there is so we know where they're at, so we know where the contrast needs to be. But the reason I'm painting over them is because it looks weird if you paint right up to the line and stop. And it's just a waste of time to be trying to put tape on everything. It's easier just to paint it in there, come back and take it out later. So these are areas that I already had kind of highlights, but now I've got a little bit more, just a little brighter. And when we put that black back in front of there, that'll really give it some depth to stand out. So, bright stuff, dark stuff, you know, more extremes, but don't lose your middle ground either. So everybody get that far, and then we're going to start putting some detail on these trees here shortly. I'm just showing you a different way to do this. I painted over these trees already, but if you didn't want to paint over them again, you could just do this, throw some tape on there. But I only want to, I want to do it this way because I only want to do this front tree. I want the rays to kind of go between these trees. We're going to do these light rays, sun rays through here, just to show you an idea. We're going to put several layers of texture and stuff on those trees for the bark. But let's get some of this sunshine in here real quick. Now this is a step that you can definitely get carried away on if you're not careful. So you want to make sure you're completely dry before you start this, because when you put this on, you want to wipe it off. You don't want to wipe your painting off, so make sure you're completely dry.
Less is more.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, and so all this over here is going to be covered up, so I can test it on that area and see how we're going to show up. I want this paint to have some water in it, because when I put it on, see how that kind of, the idea is that you're going to put it on and kind of let it get somewhat dry and then start trying to wipe it off, and it'll leave some paint. Now, the pitfalls here. If you start making streaks, they all need to come from a central point. They need to start at one point, and everything needs to be a perfectly straight line from that point. If you start, if you start here, this line will be here, 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 and you don't want to make them like, prison bars. You don't want to perfectly space them out. You only need a few, but don't make it like one here, one here, one here. You want them all to start from one pivot point. all right, which is off the canvas but up here. So I'm gonna get this paint. It's 80% water. I come in here and just really quickly throw this in here. All right, there's one. There's another one. Another one from there. And you can kind of put these in real quick. Then I'm going to let the paint kind of get out of the brush and come back over these and kind of manipulate them a little bit, kind of push them around. Don't want to show up too good. And they have to be perfectly laser straight and all go to one point. They don't show up all that great, but that's okay. You just want a little hint of it. They're only going to show up kind of right in here, and as it dries, it'll fade in a little bit better, and it won't show up even as much as it does now. You can do way too much of this if you're not careful. Now, all that's going to be covered up, so make sure you come from way up in the corner. Where these rays land across these trees, I wanted some of them to cut across in front of that little tree, and they're not going to go in front of this little, but we'll be able to paint. When we highlight the trees, you'll see the areas where those rays land. We can highlight that a little more, and it'll make them stand out even more. So there's not a whole lot there, right? Together, when we have all the detail on it, it'll really make a difference. So I want that effect of one ray going, at least one or two going behind that first tree and over the second tree. You got that? Everybody can do that? That'll be it for tonight.
Got it.
All right. For tonight, we want to completely finish the trees. And that includes adding these limbs, all the details, all this texture to these trees. These trees are kind of the star of the show here, so we're going to spend a little time on those and hopefully get a chance to block in some of this right side stuff so that next week when we finish up, we can have all time to do the swing and the details, all the flowers and that kind of stuff. But I'm going to go through this tree decorating procedure, and it's several steps, but it's kind of a lot of the same thing over and over. One thing to notice is when we start putting the highlights on the trees, notice how they land where the beams are. We're going to try to make sure we get some light where these beams hit. Also notice that this background tree don't have nearly as much detail as the foreground tree. It's darker, it's pushed back, it's not the star, the front tree is. So if you haven't done the trees like this with us, there's a little bit of a technique I'll show you. Like most things, we're going to start with three colors, three different, mid, a dark, and a highlight. And actually, when it's all said and done with this, it's probably going to be more like 7 or 8 different layers, yeah, realistically. But I'm going to start with just a dark brown, and when I add my gesso to it, it's going to turn sort of into a gray, but it's a gray that kind of leans towards brown, if that makes sense. For this first coat of it, I'm going to get a tone that's kind of in the middle somewhere. So go a little darker, and I need a lot of water. Keep going back and getting more water because I can't seem to get enough here. Need a lot of water, and we're going to do a lot of finger painting with this. So every step of the way, we're thinking about the light coming from here and coming across. So your light side is on the right, dark side is on the left. And if I do a mid-tone, it'll be wider, and I get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter as I go over. It gets smaller as it goes to the edge. So with this, I need a little bit more water. Best way to do this is to just kind of tap it on there. No real, order to it, and you can even lay the brush this way. This is just my liner brush. I'm going to do a section at a time, and then just with a wet finger, you can just kind of tap around on that. If the paint is watery enough, and the canvas texture will give you a lot of little detail stuff that you didn't really have to work to get.
Yeah.
Don't work it too much, because see, it don't take much. And you leave a little bit of
Dark on
you leave a little spot. I accidentally got a hole there. That's fine. I'm gonna make that a knot in the tree when it's over with. And you do a little section at a time so it can be nice and so it can be wet. I'm gonna put a little on, and it's just straight water, just dripping, soaking wet water, and it's kind of just a little up and down scribble. Kind of scrub it a little bit into the texture of the canvas. I don't want it to drip, but it's kind of puddled looking on here. Now this first coat, I am leaning it more towards the right side of the tree, but I want it to cover a good bit of the tree. because this is going to be my color, my base coat for that. Now, that's one part of what we're doing, and it takes a minute for that to dry, and I can't do the next step until that dries. But while it's drying, I'm gonna go ahead and work on something else. This is how I like to do things. I like to have 2 or 3 things going at once, so I can work on one thing while the other one's drying. But I'm gonna come back with some of that really dark, almost black tree color. The tree, the original, base tree color, because I got to put that limb in. That swing has to have a place to live. Yeah. Now, if your tree is bigger, smaller, you just got to think that limb has got to be the right size that it could be supported by that tree. If it's a foot wide tree, can't have a foot wide limb. It's going to be half the size. Probably half is a good. It would be the maximum size that it would be. So I'm just going to put one kind of up here. Just going to pick a spot and let that kind of come up. I don't want too much. I don't want to have to paint a bunch of limbs. I'm going to let it kind of run off the canvas some here. Go up and out. And let that kind of go up off the canvas. Don't want too much detail on it, but it does have to be thick enough to support this swing, so I'm going to thicken that up just a bit. You don't want a kid swinging and breaking the limb,
Yeah.
Bad news.
Yeah, because Dad made the wrong choice on the
Right.
limb.
Should have made that limb thicker. And again, with limbs, we talked about before, they tend to look better if they're not curvy, swoopy. Where it comes into the tree will usually be a smooth transition here, and it's more sharp turn there. It kind of goes up out of the. Just come from the center of the tree if you can, and then just a few more here and there. I don't want too much. I don't want too many really big limbs here. As that dries, it'll look better. And I may come back and do more of this later. Can always come back and add more, especially detailed stuff to the limb. Remember, most of the time when you're doing these little branches, they end upward. Right, they grow towards the sky. The back tree, again, not much detail. Don't need too much on it, but it does need to look like a tree and not a telephone pole. Just a little something on it. When you're doing these limbs like this, you got to think about, instead of having a flat tree with limbs coming out the sides, you got to think some are coming this way and some are going that way. So sometimes you start a limb thinking, okay, I'm going to make a limb that goes back towards that way. Where would it be? It comes off the back of the tree, and if it was going back that way, you would only see it kind of go up and kind of off into nowhere. It wouldn't have a whole lot of distance and depth to it. Same way with stuff that comes forward. It's hard to do that. It's hard to create that. You do more of it with your shadow and light than you do with the base of it, but don't be afraid to cross them over too. They're standing right next to each other. The limbs are going to cross over. Like I said, I may come back and do some more of that later. I just want to make sure I got a thick enough limb here to tie a swing to. And already you see that's pretty much dry. And it darkens when it dries. So I started with this color that looks a lot lighter on here than it does on there.
Oh, the little tree was behind the big one.
It is. It's kind of behind there.
Okay.
Well, maybe that limb is not. I can fix that with shadows too, though. I'm going to do a little bit of that too on the back tree. So you can kind of work in different areas, so you can do a little at a time here and there. But let's move on. I'll use some of this paint while I have this color made here.
Excuse me.
Sorry, this step.
Didn't even.
Okay. I'm gonna pull a little more white into it. Don't want to go too dramatic, too drastic of a shift at once. Do a little bit at a time. And now you don't have to do the whole tree and then the whole tree again and the whole tree again, each shade. Each time you can do just a little here and a little there. But where this light beam is coming across, I know I want to have more light in that area. So especially as I get towards my lighter colors, I want to focus more on having them to the right side of the tree, but also keep some of it inside that. Yeah, not perfectly. Doesn't have to be perfect. On the really bright one at the end, I may put something that's more kind of perfectly lined up with it. But the light in general is going to follow where those beams are. So I got this shape forming up here. I'm going to go ahead and let that form. Some of these little things that just kind of show up. You got to leave some dark in there too. Come on down. And you can do this with another brush if you'd rather. Flat brush. Sometimes that works too, just to have some, kind of gives you the texture to push the paint around, lets you see what you're doing a little bit better. But I you know how I am. I like a little bit less control sometimes. I think letting it happen works better a lot of times than trying to force it. Because you'll sit here and try to paint bark, every little. All right, and so each step of the way, you're going to go a little lighter, and each time it dries, it's going to dry a little darker. But as I get lighter, I want to make sure that I stay more to the side, to the right side. My darker, I'm going to keep the back side. To keep the mids to the middle, the darks to the left, and the lights to the right, more or less. And here's another trick too. Instead of worrying about getting it all on the edge and worrying about getting it over where you want it to go, if I put it on there, kind of smear it around, and it gets where gets in the spot where I didn't really want it. Smear that a little bit better. You can come back with a clean, especially a clean flat brush, while it's still wet. You kind of just clean that edge up like that. Works real well. And a paper towel or whatever you got, and just wipe that off. But there's back and forth on this. There's put a little paint, put a little light, put a little dark. Trying to make texture, and each layer makes a little more texture. I will come back even on the left side and do darker stuff. And then when it's all said and done, I'm going to have some almost pure white highlights on this side, really dark on that side, and then at the very, very end, and we'll come back at the end and see this part, we can wash over it and make it a different color. If it's not really brown, because we're using grays and it's going to look like a gray tree and I want it to be a little more brown, I can come back and wash over it and make it brown. So let's do this. Let's do several steps of this. We'll come back at the end and I'll show you the finishing. I got these in, I got them highlighted lighter than what I really want them to be. You see that? It's lighter, it's almost white. It's too bright on that side, and that was intentional. So I'm gonna get some of this burnt umber, put just a tiny amount of blue in it. Might even do a tiny amount of yellow in it. Give it a little bit of a green. See if I can get this where you can see it. But I don't want any gesso in this at all. No gesso in it at all. Alright, so a lot of water. So my trees I'm just going to color them now. They're gray. I wanted them a little more brown. You get a lot of water in this, no gesso. If you put gesso in it, you'll paint over them. But doing it this way, it's transparent, and you can come back over these trees with a little bit of brown. You don't have to be even real perfect with it. And just kind of colorize the whole thing. See how that works? And your highlight area will stay light, dark area will stay dark.
Sweet. That's cool.
And you're pushing it back.
So brown and water.
Just mainly water and brown. And you can tweak the color a little bit if you want to. It's really going to look good on this one because I got a lot of white here. Alright, and so I haven't really focused on my beams yet, my beams of light. I'm saving it for this last part. Color this tree real quick. And if you want it more brown, if it's still too light, you want it more brown, you can always come back and do another coat of this. I don't like trying to be neat. I'd rather just put it on there and then kind of come back and clean up my edge. But, okay, so now that it's on there and it's still kind of wet, here's a magic trick right here. See where those beams are coming across there? Watch that. Kind of wipe that just a little bit. Just a little. Where those beams are. You see that? Now I can still come back and do a little highlight here, a little shadow there, and still kind of make it a little more, because you see how it kind of tones everything down. I still want to brighten up my bright spots, but now I know where to focus, and I still want to darken up some of my dark spots. So I'll still do a little detail on it, but that's the wash and then wiping off where the beams are is a good way to kind of get those highlights going. All right, go ahead and get that far. Let's take some. Okay, we're getting there. We gotta get this right side blocked in. So the way we did last time, we started with black and then got lighter and lighter. We're gonna kind of do opposite here. I want to see the light shining through, and I'm not really happy with the way this original is. I want to make that even more kind of the leaves glowing behind the trees. We'll do it the opposite way. We're going to start light and then go darker and leave some of those light ones showing. But for now, I just want to block in the really light, before my paint dries up here, the really light limbs that are having the light shining through them. They're glowing. We'll make some color here. That's going to be too much blue, I'm sure. I'm going to make some really light, glowing green here. Mostly yellow. See how that is? Mostly yellow. And I need a lot of water.
We ain't in church.
Okay.
Well, technically.
So I want to leave this glow here, but I want this limb to kind of cover. What I'm trying to create is kind of a path around here, and a lot of this right in here is going to be really dark. So really, what I want to focus on is the limbs that kind of come out in this area, and this is just going to show up. Let me get a little more white in that actually. Get a little lighter. It needs to be lighter than the background. So it's gotten thick.
Put you some water in there.
Yeah, gotta get some water, get it broken up. And that is super light right there. Yeah, see that?
Yeah.
Okay. A little bit more of that green glow to it. Yeah, that'll work. And so over here, like I said, this is gonna be covered up, so that don't matter as much. I'm really just getting my brush to act right over here like this. Brush to separate. So when I come out to the edge, now I've got them separated. Come out to the edge. You can't see these all that well.
Right.
But you'll be able to see it a little bit in front of this light area. It's just a placeholder for where our darker stuff is going to go in front of it. And as we paint each layer coming back, we'll leave just a little bit showing. So the next layer will be a darker green, and then darker and darker, and each layer will peel back a little bit and leave that showing.
Yeah.
As it gets down here, it's going to kind of come back in. Remember, this is foreground. These trees are in the very, very front up here. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Now back here, I don't care what that looks like because it's all going to be painted over. Put a little light there, so whenever I leave a hole, it'll show through and it'll be real nice and light. And I'm trying not to leave any really hard edges that have to be hard to cover up. Same with the at the bottom. with the light grasses here. There'll be some darker grasses in front that show through. Let's go ahead and just throw some of this on here. Now the dark down here, I'm not going to go too far down into that. So I have a couple places where the light can show through there. You can barely see that, and when it dries you'll be able to see it even less. But that'll give us an idea of where to start. And we'll go back and we'll do a greener green, a little greener, a little darker till we get to almost this black and the limbs and things in the foreground. So we're doing this one back, light to dark. So let's get that far tonight. That'll be it for tonight. We're gonna finish this up tonight. We got this side over here and all the grass at the bottom. What I want to do first half of the night is to finish this tree. There's not a whole lot of detail to it, not a lot to it because it's not the focus of the painting. We're going to try to look past that. And then we'll spend the second half putting all these flowers and details and detail stuff in the foreground, and last but not least the swing. So as I mentioned before, we're painting backwards on this one. We did that dark and then lightened it up. On this one we're going to do light and make it darker as we go. So I want to do a color that is darker than what's there. I started with my neon looking stuff. Put a little bit of white in here. That just is so thick.
It is thick. Spray it with water.
Yeah, that's as thick as just.
So I won't buy that anymore.
It's like toothpaste.
A little brown.
It
Drop
does.
down.
Paint with crest.
All right, so that's
Minty
pretty good,
fresh.
pretty bright green, and it's darker than what's behind there. Now I know that I'm going to need a ton of water in this. Make
Because
it
you
work
want
right.
some of that to show through.
Yeah, I do want some of it to show through, but I need the water mainly to make my brush
Oh yeah, do what it's
act
supposed to.
right.
Gotta train that brush.
It is. You'd think this one would be broke in by now. It's being stubborn. All right. So I don't want to completely cover everything I have there, and I want to kind of go up to the edge of it, up to where those limbs behind there kind of show through a little. Doesn't have to be, limb for limb exactly. Just want to have another dimension of it, another layer of that showing through. And I'm really going to focus on the edge of it to the shape of the overall tree more than anything, because as I keep going, I'm going to be building further back in, more solid. And eventually it's going to get, so dark it's like a silhouette. And this is the stuff the light is shining through. Back in the back. Down here, not going to be as far. But each step of the way, I don't want to make it solid. Keep it kind of lacy, because each step of the way you want to have the opportunity to have some show through. You get down here, let's say these are a little different kind of brushes, brushed, and maybe this growing kind of upward. Maybe it's a little different kind of bush down here or something. Whatever yours needs. I do want to go, pretty much all the way back, but I don't care what it looks like back here. I want to get some paint so I don't have a stopping point where you can see after it's done where that color stopped. But all this, in theory, all that's going to get painted over.
In theory.
In theory. That also lets me get the paint out of my brush so I can get my bristles nice and separated for this bottom part. I could switch to a stiff bristle brush if I wanted to for the grasses down here. I don't think it's really necessary just yet. But same kind of thing. I just want some of this light green grass down here. Come on up with it. All right. Down here where it's dark, it's gonna be dark, but it's not gonna be black like that. Not necessarily. Go ahead and just cover some of that up. All right. pause there for a second. Let's get this dried. All right, next layer, and that's dry now. So next layer, I'm going to go a good bit darker. Start with some blue. And get that green a good bit darker like that. It's got brown, it's got blue and brown, you know, leaning towards the blue, and then pull some yellow in to get it toned exactly like I want it. Now this is really going to be where you really kind of define the individual limbs you want. The rest of that stuff's just kind of showing up back there. So this is more, I don't want to follow it exactly. It's not really one tree, it's more like the edge of the woods here. So I'm going to leave a good bit of that showing through. As I come back to the back of it, and I didn't make a lot of paint, but that's okay because I want to get even darker as I come back. I'll come back in here with this almost black. And see how it goes towards the blue, pretty good bit, and then just the small amount of yellow in there. That gives me my green, and that is really dark. That's okay. And this one I can kind of do wet on wet because I don't mind if it takes a little bit of the other color. But that just gives you another dimension of those leaves. This is more of our silhouetted, you know, it's so in shadow back here that it's kind of solid. Doing this quick, and it's nice and, you know, wet, easily worked. I'm going to put a couple of limbs in here before I get too far down with it too. Make sure you go off the canvas. To stop me. I'm going to worry about the ground a little bit more later, but for now, I'm just going to block that in. Now this is where you can take your little palette knife or something, or even the back of the brush, if you want to make a couple of scratchy limbs in there. Don't get too carried away with them, but if you like that kind of stuff. I like to put them in, especially some taller stuff like that. I like to put stuff like that in and then come back and kind of mute some of it with the brush. With just some water. Kind of break it up a little bit here and there. It makes it look like you spent some effort making some detail there. Now we will come back with some limbs, and you don't have to do this many. This is kind of, it's in my opinion, that kind of took away from it a little bit on this original. I don't think I want to do that many limbs, but I may do some more that are kind of dark and in here, and then I'll have to let this dry really good, and then I'll come back really dark with another layer that's further back, and then we'll work on the ground. But let's break right here and do about 20 minutes to get this far, and then we'll come back and do this. So I'm going to show you a couple of the rest of the steps and kind of different spots. We'll do a little here, a little there, a little there. And as we finish the rest of this painting, what I'm going to do is just do a section while that's drying, move on to the next section while it's dry, move on, and keep jumping around. But I'll show you just kind of a little bit of each section. The one is in this dark tree here. It is mostly a silhouette, but there's going to be some parts that you can see, where some light shines through, and some of these, we want the light to kind of be showing some of the stuff on here. So I want to kind of use some highlights to sort of create some little individual bushes down here. Kind of like I said, this is kind of maybe a different type of bush. Let's try that a little better. Should try to make some
Oh, it's dried.
slightly different color.
Dry,
I don't want to go too deep into my black, but it will look good if it's not a solid, you know, just a dead stop to black. And as I get closer out to the edge of these, they might be even a little lighter.
Because then you lose.
Right. You just want this bottom little section here to look like a little different kind of tree. Whatever it is, weeds. Something different than the rest of the tree. And a little splash of color ain't gonna hurt anything. May also do a little bit of light shining through up here if necessary. Remember how we do that? Just put some little dots of paint here and there where you think the light might come through and just kind of dab it with your finger. That can let it look like light shining through. I don't do too much of that because that's should be kind of dark. But I may come back and forth and work on that as it needs and step back and look at it and see what it needs. Especially in areas where it looks like I might could distinguish where there might be a limb or something, you know. Make it look like there's a little light shining through right now. I don't know. Maybe not. Then, so that's one part, is building these bushes in this little ground right here. But also the grasses. And there's, like we did with previous paintings, you can do some light, some dark, but you don't have to do that many. Light area. If it's going to come up there in front of the light area, I think I want it dark. I'll have a couple of colors mixed here. So I can have some, you know, just some individual grasses. You don't, you know, if you do 50, it'll look like 500. You don't have to do them all. Just a little. And if you kind of blot out the bottom of them, it'll just kind of look like it comes from a mass there. Some dark, some light. Put some dark down. The dark ones show up on top of where the light is. The light ones will show up on top of where the dark is. So that's another section. Also our flowers. If you noticed in the reference photo, you had some flowers. Kind of field of flowers. Instead of where this grass is, it's mostly a little field of flowers back there. I want this white to have a little bit of that green in it, just a touch green. And in the brightest part of it, I guess so, it's just trying to get up under it. Now this is where you can mess it up if you don't focus on the depth. Back there they're going to be really small, and as you come forward they're going to get a lot bigger. Back here they're going to be so small and they're going to kind of run together. Right? So if this is just little wildflowers growing all over the ground back here, they'd be really small, really close together, way back here. And when they're in the light like this, they're pretty white. In a minute we'll do some in the shadow. We'll let them be gray. I don't even care if they stop. You know, if they keep going up here, that's fine too. It doesn't have to be a perfect stop. Get that white out here. As you come each step of the way, they want to get a little further apart, a little bit bigger. I'm keeping the brush kind of this way because I want them, if anything, to be kind of flat like they're on the ground. Make sure you're not doing polka dots. Perfect polka dots. Alright, come back and play with that some more. As we get further up though, I want to put some grasses in here, and then they will be definitely more spread out and individual. All right. I'll do some more of that now. For the ones that are kind of down here in the front, and I'm jumping time on each, a little more time on each one. But what's neat is when these are in the shadow like this, you can make a gray. And these foreground flowers are going to have a little more detail to them. If you want to come up here and paint some actual, small flowers, the ones in the shadow will be gray. They're not picking up any of that light. But as they get up towards the top, they're going to get lighter. That's kind of down in the grass are kind of grayer. And then paint out here. Some that are pretty bright white. If they come up above here into the light, they're going to be a lot brighter. And you don't notice that when you look at it. If you do it right, it looks like they're all white. So I'm going to spend some time on that and make some, might even put a little yellow dot in the middle of some of these to make them, have a little detail here in the front. Also, if there are any, and there would be, if it's a field of flowers, there would be flowers kind of out here under the swing. They would be white if they're in this area, but if they're in that shadow area, you're going to want to go back to your gray. Right back here, all these would be kind of gray. So I'm going to do a lot more of that. I'm going to put some scattered around, but here in the light areas here, I want some super bright white stuff. I may do some really bright sprigs of grass. I want to pull some grasses up in front of my trees, tie them down a little more. Some dark grasses, flowers with grass in front of them, and just back and forth with layers. I'm going to work on this little bush a little more. May put some more light shining through the trees, just jump around from everywhere. And very last thing, and I'll let y'all get started on it. We'll spend the rest of the night on all this detail. For me, I'm going to use this 1-inch tape. There's different widths over there if you want to find a piece of tape that you like. Where I want to put my swing, I think I want it hanging kind of like right here. Kind of right there. If this gravity is going to be holding this down, so if it gets in here and it's crooked, if both your lines are crooked, that's going to look really, really weird. It's going to be like water that don't sit level. You need this, even though my tree's not straight, I want my swing to be perfectly straight up and down. So I'm going to pick a spot where I can kind of mark and measure where I want to put that. Here. Let's see. I think I'll just pick a spot. As long as it matches top and bottom, I think I'm going to say 6.5 inches right here. Yours may be different. Hopefully it probably will be. Everybody's is a little different. So then, I got it level top and bottom. Now I can take this tape. If you don't do the measurement and the tape, by just trying to look at it and eyeball it, you're going to get it off. It's going to be wrong because your tree's not perfectly straight. Now, I'll figure out where I want that bottom of the swing to be. You don't want it to be too far off the ground. You want it to be accessible.
Yeah, because we got short people.
Yeah, might have a short person. But for painting that rope, I'm going to put one piece of tape and I'm just going to go down both sides of the tape with my liner brush. And I'm just going to take a kind of a tan color here, a brown color. If after I get it in there, I might come back and highlight one side or the other. but it needs to be a really thin line. Now it's rope. It doesn't have to be brand new, perfect out of the package rope, you know what I mean? It can have a little bit of something to it, but it don't need to be super thick or weird. You can really make it look weird if you're not careful. That tape will kind of help you guide your brush where it needs to go. Really want to get it where it's visible, and then when I pull the tape off I can fix it as I need to. Even the length of it, make it a little longer than what I want. Roll the tape. Let's see how that did. That's good. That's good. So that doesn't have to be perfect. It as far as how the solid the line is. Like I said, I'll go back and highlight. I'll darken the areas that need to be. If like right here where I can't see it, I may make it a little darker right there where it's light behind it. It's fine right here where it goes in front of this dark area, but I may lighten it in front of the dark. Lighten in front of the dark areas, darken it in front of the light area, so it shows up a little better. And if I may highlight this side of it. As for the swing itself. You don't have to stress too much about the detail or the shape of the swing or anything like that. If you want help kind of sketching that in, let me know. But it's just basically going to be, for me, it's just going to be a piece of wood across there. Just going to be kind of, I'll do an edge this way. That kind of shape. And I'll highlight. That's kind of the shape that I want overall. If you need help putting that on there in perspective, let me know. I mean, this is not a perfect piece of wood. This is just the block end, the placeholder. I'll come back and paint it and make it look like wood. But something like that. Is that good enough? Then I'm going to jump around and do all this detail and fill in, and we'll get back. I'll have a bunch more grass, bunch more flowers, details on this swing, and that's pretty much going to be it.